There you go, Bill.
What a wonderful trip. What a
I had
wonderful
a colleague, great guy from another firm. I was told to pass on to you an open invitation to Ella and to you and Jody if you want. From Lorraine's brother, you would love them. Yeah, they live like 3 blocks. He plays cards, oddly enough, with Rabbi Siegel's, Judy Siegel's father. They live 3 blocks from each other. And she grew up 3 blocks away. They uh, they had a speaker at the AJC luncheon, Laura Shaw Frank, Dr. Frank, who heads up the task force for the anti-Semitism in colleges. And when she was explaining what was going on, he said of all the schools, the one that's the least, who has the least problems is Brown. Yeah, and they've got everything in the Ivy League, and that Tulane is doing a much, much better job. Huh? Yeah, 40%. Even when I went there, when I went to school, it was Jewish. She'll be, they'll be proud that all the kids that I know that go to Tulane love it. Ben Siegel, Judy Siegel's son, goes to Tulane. Yeah, yeah. A nice kid. He and Daniel are good friends. You're Richard Hoffman. Yeah, they all. Um, Vanderbilt. I think she would have been much. She's getting much more comfortable at Tulane. You know what Lorraine says? You end up going where you're supposed to go. And they have a good Hillel, I think. Well, if you want somewhere to go for services, huh? Yeah. They belong to Gates of Prayer. It's in Metairie. But nothing's that far out. That's where they live. They live in Metairie. Yeah, it's a very nice
Chapter.
35-1.
Lorraine grew up in right near Tulane. At Gates of Prayer. It used to be Lowy.
You know Weinblatt. Oh, yeah, there was a conference. Yeah. I spoke to his son. His son is buying a house in Jerusalem. Yeah, he can. I picked up the phone to call him. He went right through to Israel.
Prices go down.
Yeah, good time to buy.
It's over. I always say now's the time to buy. If I had any money.
Did you find anything in Biden's speech that was offensive? Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I let it go because
It was okay. I mean, it was, but he needs to appeal to both sides to win. That's not what he says is meaningless.
it's what he does.
And in my opinion, he's been
So,
From the beginning of his career.
But
You're talking about Netanyahu?
what?
You're talking about Netanyahu?
No,
no,
Biden.
Biden,
Biden.
yeah.
Netanyahu is an abject disaster.
So why did ADL honor Jared Kushner? Why did ADL honor Jared Kushner?
Probably from my
Yeah.
You got it.
same reason we are.
No wonder I have to honor.
Shabbat Shalom. Good to see you. Here we go.
Being honored, he was the principal speaker at ADL.
V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי וינפש שבת, וינפש שבת, וינפש ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן, amen l'chaim. Okay, blessing for Torah study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'direi Torah. Amen. Okay, so Torah study is Vayakel. It's a boring portion. It's boring. Like I said to the bar mitzvah boy tonight, sorry for your luck. You know, it's not that great. So, but all right. Right. In the hands of a lesser rabbi, this would be a very boring week. But all right, we'll figure something out. So why do I say that? Because it talks about the construction of the tabernacle and all the things that go in it. However, if you remember, before last week we talked about the golden calf, well, the Torah portion of the golden calf called Kitisa. But the weeks before that, Truma and Tetzaveh was also the construction of the tabernacle. And so, now this year's a leap year. Right, so normally we'd read these last two Torah portions of Exodus together, Vayakel, Pekude, but because it's a leap year, we split them up. So this week's Vayakel, next week is Pekude, and they're both pretty short. So, but Vayakel, Pekude, this week and next week, is a reiteration of what we already learned in Truma and Tetzaveh about building the things that go in the tabernacle. So, the question is, if everything in the Torah is meant to be, why do we have to repeat why do we have to have this repetition? Now we understand Deuteronomy as a repetition because Moses was about to die and he wanted to give a few sermons on the way out, and he needed to remind the people who are going into the land of Israel to follow the mitzvahs, and it was a new generation because the other generation died off during the wandering, and now he's reminding the people who weren't necessarily at Mount Sinai or were too little at Mount Sinai to understand everything that he taught. But this is now 2 Torah portions later to the exact same people, a repetition of the same material they just heard. And the question is why? So it seems to me that the clue is what's in between. Okay, so we have in Truma and Tetzaveh the construction of the tabernacle. Then we have the construction of the golden calf, which is the exact opposite of the construction of the tabernacle. And then after the construction of the golden calf and the destruction and the punishment of everything that went along with the golden calf, we have the repetition. We have the repetition of Truma and Tetzaveh. Okay, right. And so the question is why? Why would you think that would be necessary? What does that tell you? What does it tell you?
That we got so sideways and we were...
Yeah, so, yeah, we can pass the mic. Thank you.
We got sideways by following, the golden calf and that idea and that concept that we got away from the Mishkan and what we were doing and what God had commanded. So we have to have this reset so that we get it again, because we get another set of tablets too.
Exactly. So, sometimes something happens. Just a tequila there. No. I wasn't sure if it was a shvarim or not. Sometimes you get a third. Sometimes something happens and now you live in a new world. And the question is, in the new world, what from the previous world still holds true and what doesn't? So for example, what holds true on October 8th that's different from October 6th? Right? We live in a different world. What holds true on September 12th that didn't on September 10th? Right? Sometimes something, and the golden calf is one of those incidents that was so shocking, was so incredible, that when it was over, you go back to reality and you ask yourself, is the reality still the same? Does that make sense? So I think that's what the Torah is teaching us. We have reality, and then something so jarring, the golden calf, and it's not like the golden calf in a vacuum. It was the golden calf at Mount Sinai when Moses was about to bring down the 10 Commandments. It's a pretty big moment to turn to an idol. And it was pretty much everyone who did, except for the women and the Levites. But everybody else was involved. All the men of all the other tribes. Now, when we say all the men of all the other tribes, that includes Judah. That includes Joseph, who was split into Ephraim and Manasseh. In other words, it includes the people who were supposed to be the leaders. And a new leader emerged, the Levites. Because you know how the Levites are important? Like if your last name is Levi and you get an Aliyah. Now in Reform, you don't do it. Because in Reform, we said, we're all equal. So if you come to the minyan and you say, I'm a Levite and I've been getting a raw deal here, just go to the hub, because we have the conservative minyan and they do it. So they think you're something special. So you can walk into the hub on days when there's a conservative minyan, like you're all that. And then you can walk back into this building and we'll remind you, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Yeah.
if we learn throughout the Torah that God is a parent and the Israelites are his children, and when your parent punishes you, after you get punished, your parent reminds you of why you got punished
Yeah.
and what the rules are. And this is very analogous to that. God is reminding the people of Israel what the rules are.
Ah, very nice. Very nice. Okay, so let's go on. We have a lot to get to. That was a lengthy preamble. You know, you know who built the Mishkan, right? Who was the guy? Bezalel. Now, if you're a fan of Daniel Silva, you know that Gabriel alone got his art training at the Bezalel Art Academy, which in reality is right next to, literally right next to, our sister congregation, Harel, in Jerusalem. They're actually right next to each other. Now, Bezalel, I don't know if that was really his name or not, but it means something, right? Sal, or tsel in Hebrew means shade or shadow, right? El means God, and ba means in. So Bezalel means in God's shadow. That there was something about this guy Bezalel. Now, I want to tell you something. Work on Shabbat is prohibited according to the Torah, and according to the Talmud, there are 39 different categories of work you're not allowed to do. Now, where did they get those categories? What are those 39 categories from? Does anyone know? Exactly. Bobby knew that too. You knew that? Yeah. Okay. That's what you're going to say. So there are 39 different types of work. Cutting, burning, tying, untying, schlepping, whatever. 39 different things you're not allowed to do. And so those 39 things that you weren't allowed to do are the things you're not allowed to do on Shabbat. And one of the best reasons I've ever heard from that is because during the week, people were running in 39 different directions, going about doing their work. And if you were allowed to keep working on the Mishkan on Shabbat, then Jews would have been running in 39 different directions, and it's not what God wanted. God wanted everyone to be together. So he said, the things that are causing you to be separate from each other, we want to get rid of those, and then on Shabbat you'll all be together. So you're not allowed to do those work things. But the idea was that everybody was working. If people weren't working on the Mishkan to build the Mishkan, you wouldn't need this rule. And, you know, we could watch TV on Shabbat without feeling guilty, right? And driving and stuff without, you know, when I was growing up, we went to shul pretty much every Saturday. We went to a conservative shul and we drove, and it was several miles. But on the way to shul, we always passed one of my teachers from my school as she was walking to shul. Now, I went to an Orthodox day school. And we would see her walking to shul, and we drove past her. And she would smile at us. But she couldn't wave. Because to wave would be an indication that it's, you know, it's okay to drive on Shabbos. So, chas v'shalom, you know, this she could do. But this, that would have been, you know, such a desecration of God's name that she couldn't do. You're right. So, I think it was to my parents in the front that she was like, but to the kids in the back, it's not your fault. Maybe someday you'll grow up and you'll understand Shabbat. You know, all right, whatever. That's the world I grew up in. So, here's my point. So, every once in a while, it's good to have one. So, who built the Mishkan? We just said it. Well, Bezalel. It says Bezalel built the Mishkan. But everyone was running in different directions doing it. So why do we talk about Bezalel built the Mishkan if the truth is, pretty much everyone was working on it? So there was something about him that was different, but we shouldn't say he was the only guy building it. They were all building it. The question is then, what was he doing? And so now he was supervising.
The artist.
As the architect, okay, he did something. Something that he did that Moses couldn't do. Because if Moses could, you just have Moses do it. Or maybe and here's the question I really want to ask today. Maybe Moses could do it, but there was a reason why God wanted someone else to do it. All right. Clear so far on the questions? So what we have so far is we're going to look at the construction of the Mishkan again. But instead of looking at the construction of the Mishkan, I'm more interested right now in who constructed the Mishkan. So we know that Bezalel was in charge. We know that Moses probably could have been in charge. He was smarter than Bezalel because he was smarter than everybody. He was the only one who could talk to God, could get concepts that no one else could get. But yet God said, Moses isn't going to do this job, Bezalel is going to do this job, but he's not really doing the job. Everyone else is doing the job, but he's doing something, so what is he doing? And he's got a partner who's like Benz. Oholiab, right? Nobody said, I have a Mercedes. Nobody said, I have a Mercedes Benz. You have a Mercedes? What kind of car do you drive? Do you have a Mercedes? So who is Bezalel? But Oholiab, he's the other guy. He doesn't get as much as the. Okay, so if you look with me now, actually before we look at this week's Torah portion, I want to look back to the original time it's mentioned in chapter 31, which is the end of Tetzaveh. I'm sorry, it's actually from last week's Torah portion, Kitisa. If you just look at it with me for a second, the beginning of chapter 31. Okay, so my question is, what's so great about Bezalel? If everyone's building the Mishkan, why is he pointed out? And what does he have? So, chapter 31, verse 1. I'll just read this quickly. My translation may be a little bit different than yours, because it's better. But here we go. But God spoke to Moses, saying, See, I have called by name Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. I think we mentioned this last week, and we get a few parts of his biography here. So the parts of his biography I want to mention are Bezalel, son of Uri. Okay, I'm okay with that because we always say the father's name. But we almost never say the grandfather's name. So why do we add son of Hur as well? Probably to tell us that he came from a special line, because Hur, if you look at the sheet provided, Hur was, second source down, the son of Miriam. So Bezalel is the nephew of Moses, right? Great nephew of Moses. Right? The great nephew of Moses. So that's special. Right? There's a connection there. Okay. But he's from the tribe of Judah. Okay. Now, in Hebrew it says, "Va'amaleo to ruach Elokim." I filled him with the Spirit of God. And then the next three words are interesting. Chochma, Tvuna, and Da'at. And this is what... Yeah, this is Chabad, right. So this is the Chochma. Now, the word here is Tvuna, but it can also be, as a noun, Bina. And when you refer to it in a Kabbalistic sense, they use the term Bina, which is why Chabad uses it. And Da'at is knowledge. And if you take the first letters, the acronym Chet Bet Daled is Chabad. That's where that comes from. So Chabad is filled with whatever Bezalel had. Okay, so what does Rashi say? Chokhmah is wisdom, Bina is understanding, and Da'at is knowledge. What does Rashi say those mean? What does Rashi say is so special about Bezalel? So he says, wisdom is what a person hears from others and learns and makes his own. Okay. Presumably then, Bezalel, as a relative of Miriam and Moses, would have spent a fair bit of time learning from the best. His mother and his uncle. Okay. Understanding, no, it's not a great nephew, he's a nephew. No. Miriam's his mother. Oh, that's right. Uri's mother, right. Okay, very good. We're talking about Bezalel. I'm thinking about Hor for a second. Right, for Bezalel, correct. Understanding is understanding a matter by one's own intelligence, deducing it from things one has already learned. And Da'at means holy inspiration. So whatever all that means, and I don't really know, even though I went to a Chabad day school through 7th grade and didn't learn what that means, because I don't know if anyone knows. Whatever this is, Bezalel had it, and no one else did. Now, Moses might have, but there's something that Bezalel has that Moses doesn't, and that Moses could never get, and we've pointed it out already, but I don't want to get into it yet, because I need it for later. Yeah.
What I wanted to mention is that he must have been extremely young, because this is the great-grandchild of Miriam. So this was not someone that got a lot of years for training and all that. This was something innate in him.
Yeah, very good. Very great point. Great point. I don't know how old he was,
Must have
but
been like a teenager.
yeah,
when
you
he
could
was
probably
appointed,
figure it out. Right. Very nice. Very nice. Okay, so now let's go to our Torah portion. We can pass the mic to Norman. We're in, and I want to look now. So there's Bezalel, who we just met, and then there's the other guy, Oholiab. Now, Oholiab is not as famous because there's no art school named after him. And Gabriel alone never studied by him. By the way, anybody read Daniel Silva? So last week in this room, there was a guy here who was in the Mossad. His father was in the Mossad. And his father was also an artist from Italy. And I said to him, just like Gabriel alone. And he said to me, Gabriel alone is based on my father. Yeah. He was here last week. It was pretty incredible. Yeah, it was pretty incredible. So I want to look at chapter 35, verse 30. Okay, chapter 35, verse 30. If anyone has the page and plow, you can call it out. That would be helpful. 669. Okay, great. 669, verse 30. Everyone have it?
Yep.
Okay, here we go, Norm.
And Moses said to the Israelites, "See, the Eternal has singled out by name Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, endowing him with a divine spirit of skill, ability, and knowledge in every kind of craft."
Okay, so here what we add is he has those kinds of abilities, but it has to do with craft. So, like, you know what's incredible is if you go to a university campus, say you are Brown, right, where they like Jews, at least comparatively, and you go into you're walking in the offices of the professors. And you walk into the biology professor, and this guy is a leading biologist in the world, and he knows everything about biology, and he can talk to you about biology forever, but he knows nothing else. Ask him to speak intelligently about architecture in the architecture school or in the business school or whatever. I mean, maybe he does, but probably he doesn't. There's some people have, 6 PhDs, but most people don't. Go into the architecture school and hear some genius talk about something and ask him about, marine biology. He's like, it's not my field. You know, I remember once in rabbinic school, we were sitting in the library and we were having trouble with a Talmudic section, and one of the professors of philosophy walked by. And we asked him, can you help us with this Talmud? No. You know. It was amazing. So, Bezalel, there are 39 different categories. He was an expert in all of them. That's pretty good. You know, even if you took an artist and you said, well, I'm a sculptor. Well, can you paint? I mean, a little bit, but I'm not Da Vinci. You know, I'm good. But, you know, I sculpt. You know, I don't do that. I don't weave, you know. But Bezalel was good at all of them.
So along that line in being specialist, Bezalel was expert, I guess, in everything art, but Moses was expert in matters of the soul and the heart.
Yeah.
So that's what he was supposed to, that's why God, I think, didn't give him all the other artistic stuff to do, and he brought Bezalel in
Yeah.
to do that so Moses could see to the people.
Maybe. I think there's something else. Because when it came to, like, if you look at Dot, holy inspiration, nobody had that more than Moses. So I think, you know, could Moses have figured out weaving? You know, I don't know. You know, but for whatever reason, you're right, Bezalel had this over him, but I'm going to suggest a different reason. But we're not there yet. Nancy? You going to pass the mic, please?
So, Rabbi, my thought is that the reason God decided not to have Moses do everything, but to have and to enable Bezalel to be the inspiration, the leader, and the make sure everything happens, is that Judaism is not a faith where only one person does it.
Exactly.
We are a faith of the people, and every person needs to be invested, and every person needs to participate and to count, because we are so much more together than we are if it's all done for us and we just come. We need to be an active part of the creation of the soul that goes into the faith.
Right, and what's the model for that? At the end of Genesis. Well, I don't want to give it away. You're on the right track. I still have 27 minutes. I want to keep it entertaining. All right, you're on the right track. So let's keep going. Norman, we're up to verse 32. Right, 32.
Yes. And inspiring him to make designs for work in gold, silver, and copper, to cut stones for setting, and to carve wood, to work in every kind of designer's craft, and to give directions. He and Aholiab, son of Ahismach of the tribe of Dan, have been endowed with the skill to do any work, of the carver, the designer, the embroiderer in blue, purple, crimson yarns, and in fine linen, and of the weaver, as workers in all crafts and as makers of designs.
Okay. Yeah, let's go a little bit more into chapter 36.
Let then Bezalel and Aholiab and all the skilled persons whom the Eternal has endowed with skill and the ability to perform expertly all the tasks connected with the service of the sanctuary, carry out all that the Eternal has commanded.
Okay, so how many people have this wisdom, understanding, and knowledge? Edith, can you pass the mic to Hillary?
As a teacher, I just noticed one thing, and that says one of his skills is to give directions.
Okay.
To teach. So that's also God-given to him too, besides the crafts. I'm just pointing it out.
Yeah, it's very nice. Okay, very nice. Okay, so according to verse 1, how many people have these things? So look closely. Va'aseh, va'asa B'tzalel va'Aholiav. So these two guys, B'tzalel and Aholiav, they're doing this. V'chol ish. And anyone else who can. V'chol ish what? And anyone else what? Who God put the wisdom, understanding, and the dot. The chok you have there. Chochma tvuna bahema ladat. So now you even ask the question again, what's so great about B'tzalel and Aholiab? They're not the only two guys with Chochmah, Bina, and Dot. They're not the only two guys with wisdom, understanding, and Dot, and holy inspiration. Verse 2 comes and says, V'chol ish, and anyone else who can do it. Not to mention, you got Moses around, you got Miriam around, you got Aaron around, you got Joshua around. There's some other people. Nevertheless, somehow, even though there are all these people who could do it, even though there's great leadership around, like the greatest ever, B'tzalel and Aholiab, for one reason or another, are propped up as something special. And we have to ask the question, well, what's so special about them? V'chol ish. There are other people who have this as well. Okay. So that's my question so far. Now, if we go back to the biographies of Aholiab and B'tzalel, and now I'm tipping my hand, what is it that's in the biography of the two of them that they have in common? A biographical piece of information that we learn about each of them. They're not Levites. Okay, you're on the right track. You're on the right track. Ed? We learned their tribe. Exactly. Very good. We figure out what tribe they're from. So, B'tzalel's from the tribe of Judah. And Aholiab's from the tribe of? And Moses is from the tribe of? Levi, right? And so is Aaron, although Aaron becomes a stratified part of the Levites known as the Kohanes, right? He's the high priest and so forth. Okay, so if you look at Rashi now in the middle of the page on Exodus 35:34, he comments on what we know about Aholiab being from the tribe of Dan. Everyone see that? Yeah. Okay, Edith, would you mind reading that? And Aholiab?
And Aholiab, he was of the tribe of Dan, of one of the lowest of the tribes, of the sons of the handmaids, and yet the Omnipresent placed him with regard to the work of the tabernacle on a level with Bezalel, although he was a member of one of the noble tribes, in order to confirm what Scripture says, he regardeth not the rich more than the poor.
Okay, so what makes you a higher tribe compared to a lower tribe? Well, it's who your mom is. Because if you're from Leah or Rachel, that's more honored. But if you're from their concubines, Bilhah and Zilpah, that's not as great. So the big name tribes, Leah's kids were Reuben, Shimon, Simon, Levi, and Judah. And Rachel had Joseph and Benjamin. And those six are kind of the more noble tribes. And then the other six came from Bilhah and Zilpah. And they're tribes of Israel, but for whatever reason, they don't seem to be as respected as the ones that came directly from Leah or Rachel. At least, I mean, you can argue that, but this is what Rashi believes. And Judah tended to be... Now, why also is that ordained? Because who is Israel? Israel is B'nai Yisrael, but who was... B'nai Yisrael is the children of Israel, but children of who? Who's Israel? Jacob. And at the end of Genesis, Jacob has a prophecy where he says what each tribe is going to do. And the thing that he says about Judah is, from you are going to come the kings. Very good. All the kings have to come from Judah. So if you're not from the direct line of Judah, you're not allowed to be a king of Israel. Right? And who's the famous king of Judah? David. And his son, Solomon. So when Solomon is then tasked to build the first holy temple, he recognizes that building the first holy temple is based on a microcosm. The microcosm for the holy temple was the tabernacle in the wilderness. So when Solomon realizes that it's time to build the first temple, he needs his own Bezalel. So look what happened. Where do we find that story? In 1 Kings. So if you look at 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 14, look what happens. Colleen, would you mind reading? He was the son of?
He was the son of a widow from the tribe of Naphtali, and his father had been a Tyrian, a coppersmith. He was endowed with skill, ability, and talent for executing all work in bronze. He came to King Solomon and executed all his work. Okay,
so this is weird. Now, his father was a Tyrian. That Tyre, Tyre, Lebanon? That's where they got all the wood, the cedars and stuff. And Solomon had a lot of connections there. But here we have a new tribe mentioned. No. Solomon, when he went to have the first temple built, he didn't go to Judah, he didn't go to Dan, he went to Naphtali. Let's see what Rashi says on it. Nikki, would you read that one too? It goes on to the back page. He was filled.
He was filled with the wisdom and understanding and the knowledge, the three tools with which the universe was created. As it is stated, by wisdom he founded the earth, by understanding he established the heavens, by his knowledge the depths were broken up. The base was built with these three.
Okay, Beis HaMikdash means the Holy Temple. So the Holy Temple had to be built with the same divine wisdom, understanding, and holy inspiration that the tabernacle was built in. But we have a problem here, because what we see is we would have expected that King Solomon would have picked someone to build the temple, or at least the person to be in charge, from either Judah or Dan. Now, why do you think he didn't pick someone from Judah? So, he had two choices, really. If he was going to pick someone like Oholiab or Bezalel, that means Bezalel from the tribe of Judah or Oholiab from the tribe of Dan. We don't know why he picked Naphtali, but we have one indication why he didn't pick Judah. Why not pick Judah? Because he is Judah. He's from the tribe of Judah. And if he picks someone also to do Judah, then he's giving everything to one tribe. So now we know why he didn't pick Judah, but why did he? So then we have to ask the next question: why did he pick Naphtali, but not Gad? Okay, now at the end of the Tanakh, at the end of the Bible, there's the two books called Divrei Yamim, or as they're known in English, the books of Chronicles. There's 1 Chronicles and 2 Chronicles, and they basically are a retelling of the story of the kings of Judah, from the perspective of the kings of Judah. And there's a little bit of, so if you read the books of Kings, and then you read the books of Chronicles, you're going to get the same stories, but sometimes you get a few more details. And from those details, you can learn something you didn't know when you first read the books of Kings. So if you look on the back at 2 Chronicles 2:13, Nikki, would you mind reading that? The son of a Danite.
The son of a Danite woman, his father a Tyrian. He is skilled at working in gold, silver, bronze, iron, precious stones, and wood, in purple, blue, and crimson yarn, and in fine linen, and in engraving and designing whatever will be required of him, alongside your craftsmen and the craftsmen of my Lord, your father, David.
Okay, so he was the son of a widow from the tribe of Naphtali, which means that the widow was from Naphtali because her husband was from Naphtali. But once he died, she went back to live with her own tribe, which was Dan. So Chronicles comes to tell us, yeah, it's true, she was Naphtali by marriage, but she was also originally from the tribe of Dan. So don't worry, this guy has some Danite in him. Now, in Israel today, sometimes the regional areas are referred to by the name of the tribe the land was apportioned to by Joshua. Right? So, for example, there's an area of Israel called Gush. Gush means block. Gush Dan. Where's Gush Dan? Tel Aviv. And it used to be, I don't know if it still is, but it used to be all of the Israeli bus lines were called Eged, except in Tel Aviv. In Tel Aviv, they had Dan. Why Dan? Because Gush Dan. It's not just Tel Aviv, it's kind of that whole area. Naphtali, anyone know where Naphtali got their land? In the Galilee. And they were in charge of the Sea of Galilee, which was an awesome thing to have, because you were in charge of who got fish. Right? You had control over a very powerful resource, the Sea of Galilee, for all the people who lived in the north. Now, there's a connection that's, well, let's see here. Okay, so if we look on Rashi here, we'll see that there's a connection between Dan and Naphtali. And so there's something unique about how Dan is connected to Naphtali. So, Nikki, last one. And his father.
And his father was a Tyrian man. He was a Jew who lived in Tyre, on the model of
Obed-Edom the Gittite,
who lived in Gath and who was a Levite. In Kings is written, he was a widow's son of the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a Tyrian man. His mother was from Dan, and his father was from Naphtali. Now, why was it necessary to trace his genealogy, from which tribe his father and mother were? This is what is written. God judged me, and also I have fought a divine struggle. Rachel said, I twisted cords, I went through contortions, until I was able to compare to my sister Leah. If Leah will boast of her descendant, Bezalel, who will make the tabernacle, he will require one of the sons of Dan to participate in his work. As it is written, and with him was
Oholiab,
the son of the tribe of Dan. Now if Solomon, the descendant of my sister, will build the temple, some of the sons of Dan and Naphtali will have to participate with him.
Okay, so there, according to Rashi, there's some sibling rivalry that goes back all the way to Genesis, in which, now remember, Rachel and Leah are prophets, right? So Rachel foresees that from, and you know, Jacob said this, so she knew this, that it was going to be from Leah, whose son was Judah, that all the kings would come, and that would include Solomon, and it would also include Bezalel, and that all the buildings of the tabernacle and the holy temple were going to come from her sister, and she's going to have nothing. So she also has a prophecy. And she says, well, or a prophecy about herself. Or at least she learned it from her husband Jacob, who was the one who offered all these blessings. Okay, so Leah, yes, she's going to have Judah, she's going to have Bezalel. I'm going to have Benjamin and Joseph. But Joseph's going to split in two and have a sibling rivalry, and not much is going to become of them. Because Joseph splits into Ephraim and Manasseh, and nothing becomes of them. And Benjamin, who's one of the smallest tribes, her other son, becomes part of Judah and melds into Judah. So she says, well, what do I have left? I have only my sons of the concubines. Well, which ones of them are interested in building and weaving and stuff, and that's Dan and Naphtali. So I don't have my sons, but at least I have my concubine sons, and they're going to play a role too, so that when the Holy Temple is built, it's not just going to be Judah coming from Leah. My kids are also going to have a role as well. But you can see here that Oholiab is not Bezalel, right? He's Benz. He's not Mercedes. Because every time it mentions Bezalel, and first of all, Bezalel is the first one is mentioned, and he's related to Moses, and he's mentioned first, and he's got this cool name, In the Shade of God, and he's from the tribe of Judah, which is the strongest, richest, and tribe that the kings are going to come from. And that sounds better than, and there's this other guy, Oholiab, from the poorest tribe. I mean, he's also got the wisdom and stuff, but he's from the poorest tribe, and Bezalel seems to be the guy, and he's the guy they're going to name the Art Institute after. So that's what we have so far. Now, when I was in rabbinic school, one of my professors used to call the Jewish people, like when you're talking about Jews in the Torah, the term Jew didn't really exist until the scroll of Esther. We don't hear the term. There's other terms. There's Hebrews, back in the time of Abraham. And then there's Bnei Yisrael, or Israelites. And then ultimately there's Jews. So he used to call them the Hij, H-I-J, Hebrew Israelites, Jews. He said, take your pick, I don't care, they're interchangeable. But they're different. They mean different things. Hebrew comes from, in Hebrew, the word Hebrew is Ivrit. But it comes from the verb over, to cross over, because Abraham was the Hebrew who crossed over the Euphrates and came from Babylonia to Israel, or to Canaan at the time. That's Hebrews. Israelites are when God changed the name of Jacob to Israel, and his 12 sons were going to be the 12 tribes. They became Bnei Yisrael. And Jews is something else. We'll get to that in a minute. The question is, which one's the best? If times were ideal, say the third temple came today, and God picked us all up, moved us back to Israel, and ushered in the days of the Messiah, which of the three would we be? Okay, so we got to vote for all three, which is good. That's what I was hoping would happen. Okay, so here's what I think this is all about. And I heard the seeds of this idea from a rabbi named Chaim Bravender, but maybe I'll add my own idea as well. You can take it or leave it. But here's what I think is going on. So what happened was, they built the first temple under King Solomon. So King David founded Jerusalem in the year 1000 BCE. He was king for 40 years. And in 960, Solomon took over. And between 960 and 920, Solomon and David both ruled for 40 years. Between 960 and 920 BCE, King Solomon built the first temple. Okay. Now, when Solomon died, he had a son named Rehoboam. And Rehoboam said to the people, you thought my dad was hard on you? I'm going to be even harder. And the people said, we're not interested in this anymore. And you and your tribe are ruling over us, and we don't love that. And we're going to move to the north, and we're going to start our own thing, and we're going to build our own temple, and we're going to have idols, and we're leaving you. And so they did. And they had after Solomon died, the kingdom split into two. And the northern kingdom had a king named Jeroboam, who did not come from the tribe of Judah, and they took over. Now, who lived in the north and followed Jeroboam? 10 tribes. How many tribes were there? 13, because Joseph split into two. So you have 12 tribes, but really 11 tribes and 2 halves, but they counted as separate tribes, so really there were 13 tribes. 10 tribes were in the north, 3 tribes were in the south. The 3 that were in the south included Judah, Benjamin, who was a really small tribe that got looped into Judah, and Levi, which Levi included the Kohanim. So those 3 tribes were in the south, and the south was called Judea, or Judah. Yehuda. The north was all the other 10 tribes, and it became known as Israel. Okay? Because they're more of Bnei Yisrael, and they wanted to get away from Judah. So now you have 10 tribes in the north. Again, this is in the 10th century, like the early 900s, okay? BCE. 10 tribes in the north, 3 in the south. About 180 years later, in 723 BCE, the Assyrians came and conquered the north. And those 10 tribes in the north became the 10 lost tribes. They assimilated into Assyrian culture, never to be heard from again. They're gone. Now, are the Ethiopians the tribe of Dan, maybe? Or possibly, probably. But basically, those 10 tribes were lost and they were gone. And at that point, the only Jews left in the world came from Judea. Now, at that time, what happened in 586, not long after that, the first temple was destroyed. And 70 years after that, the Jews came back after the Purim story happened. And that's the first time that someone who's just from the south is referred to, and that's Mordechai. And Mordechai is referred to as HaYehudi, the Judean. But that's the first time anyone is actually called in writing a Jew. Why is he a Jew? Because he's from Judah, from Judea. And we stopped being called Bnei Yisrael because most of Bnei Yisrael were gone, and Judah, Levi, and Benjamin became known as Judah. Now, and they would hold on for another 500 years until the Romans came and destroyed Judah, and we've been gone ever since. So, this started out as a sibling rivalry between Leah and Rachel, who were the mothers of the tribes. And it continued on until Moses said, listen, we need to have representatives of all the different tribes doing the same thing. And even Solomon tried and said, I'm not going to build the temple myself. I'm going to get someone from one of those other tribes, and he's going to come and build it. And things went fine as long as the leader recognized that all the tribes needed to be on the same page. But when Solomon died, that ended. And really what happened when Solomon died was the end of the dream of a united Jewish people. That was it. We haven't been united since. In fact, we don't even know that those 10 tribes, they were lost. Because right after the kingdom was split, the Jews in the north got lost. And we went from being Bnei Yisrael to Judah, which means we went from 12 tribes to 1. I mean, Benjamin and Levi got roped in, but we really all became Jews. So, what you see here in the difference between the difference between Betzalel and Aholiab is the dream of the different tribes, meaning of Jews working together to serve God. But what happens is, when we end up competing with each other, we lose sight of what the ultimate goal is, and we lose that Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'at, and we go from being Israel to Judah, which isn't a good thing, because we lost most of our brothers and sisters. And maybe that's why the third temple is so long in coming. But I'll end with this. Yesterday, I was talking to an Israeli Navy SEAL. He was here. And he has been in Gaza for the last couple of months. And he said to me, you know, it's really important that we get new leadership in Israel. This is his opinion. You can take it or leave it. But he said to me, we can handle any external threat. But I don't know if we can handle any internal threat. And sometimes people think the blessing of the Arabs is, which already is like a good joke, but the blessing of the Arabs is, if it wasn't for the Arabs, we'd kill each other. And actually, Israel was on the verge of doing that before October 7th. Israel was as divided as it's been in its history with the judicial reform nonsense and this radical right-wing government. And so he says, we'll be able to defeat the Palestinians, we'll be able to hold off the Iranians, but the real question is, can we stop trying to hold off each other and come together as a Jewish people? We're seeing that play out before our eyes right now, and the main question isn't going to be when this war is going to end. The main question is going to be, how are Jews going to unite once this is over? And I'll just tell you one last point. Last week, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, I went to a conference in Aventura. 110 rabbis from all over the country, Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox, uniting together to forge a new united Zionist path for American Jewry. The president of Brandeis was there, Brett Stevens was there, Richie Torres was there, a lot of other really impressive rabbis and thinkers. And right now around the country, there are 110 other rabbis, saying the same thing. Rabbi Barris was there. It was really, but what I saw was, and what I've been seeing over the last few years, is that for years, Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox movements have been at odds with each other. The movements have. But the rabbis are not. The rabbis are on the same page. In America. In Israel, it's a complete mess. In Israel, the Orthodox rabbis are from a different planet. But in America, the Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox rabbis, at least the ones who prioritize Zionism, which isn't all of them, but the ones who prioritize Zionism, we're all on the same page. And that's the kind of spirit that this Torah portion was hoping for when it said, all right, we're going to take one guy from Judah, one guy from Dan, but what they were really saying is, we're going to take one from Leah and one from Rachel. We're going to take one from the south and one from the north, because when we get to the land of Israel, you're going to be spread all over the land and you're all going to have different roles to play. And the question is, can you play your roles so that the collective benefits? Or are you going to play your role so that only your tribe benefits? If you do that, we're doomed. But if you work together, then we can build the temple together and have that holy inspiration to worship God as we were supposed to. Okay. Shabbat Shalom.
But for some reason, the next day I said, but it happened.
Well, I was, I'd sent, I don't know, because I'd sent out the notes. I was away, and I knew, and I've not had a chance to really get back in because I was, that Wednesdays, it just happens to be both girls have dance. I'm taking one over and bringing one back. I'm taking one, taking one, back and forth. 5 something till 9 at night. So it's like, that's why I can't, when I'm away, I can't do the.
Yeah, it's hard.
Porque hay un otro, como el otro día el almuerzo de Hugo.
I didn't do that, and I should have. I remember one time, it was shortly after Rabbi Goldman came, and
I love the way you read.
Lily was planning the
So fantastic, thank you.